Hello, visions of a creative Europe. Welcome to the online conference on the occasion of the German EU Council Presidency, presented by the Creative Europe Media Desks in Germany and funded by the Minister of State for Culture and the Media. Today, we will focus on one question. How do film and the media shape our future society in Europe? For sure, we all have a glimpse or had a glimpse of what it means when we cannot go to the cinema anymore and collectively experience to watch, debate about a film and talk afterwards after the movie and discuss, disagree, love it, whatever that was. Well, a lot of us have watched also streaming films and online, have been on platforms. And at any case, the question that we have also today is on how we will access, consume, and make the most in our lives of audiovisual culture, which shapes us as human beings and also makes us a modern society. I am AC Coppens, founder of the agency The Catalysts in Berlin, but actually you notice I have a little French accent, so it is with a French accent that I will guide you through the program today. And the program has been made by Creative Europe Media Desks in Berlin, Düsseldorf, Hamburg, and Munich, and they have said something really great for you. Okay, the program will be in English. There will be also some German stuff too. There will be German intertitle, and I will try not to speak too much French. But first of all, I'd like to invite on stage with me Susanne Schmidt, head of the Creative Media Desk in Germany's capital region of Berlin and Brandenburg and Central Germany, and ask her a couple of questions before we really start.
Hello.
Hello, Susanne. So, listen. This morning, Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, was calling for solidarity in action. She was talking about sustainability, she was talking about smart technology and a range of different aspects which can relate to creative industries too. On what exactly will we focus today?
So many aspects we will discuss today will be referring to what Ursula von der Leyen mentioned this morning. But first of all, please let me welcome our dear viewers in Berlin, in Germany, abroad. And I'm really happy to be here, unfortunately without my colleagues. So a big thank you to the whole Creative Europe team who made that possible. Of course, a big thank you to Alex Berlin, our broadcasting partner, and to Professor Monika Grüters, who made this event possible. So to tell a little bit more what we might expect today, we invited artists, storytellers, IT specialists, futurists, politicians to join us here on stage, also virtually, of course, and to explore the future. So they will be sharing their visions, opinions with us, and we will see, what comes next. Also where we might take action.
Mm-hmm. And for those who are not really familiar with Creative Europe, can you tell us what it is all about?
Yeah, it's difficult to sum it up in a nutshell because there are very different support mechanisms for the culture and creative industries and also the media sector, the audiovisual sector. But I would say that it's a lot about making stories travel and cross borders and finding their audiences abroad and also supporting these audiences, so to say, asked to find and access those stories. As we know, it's sometimes a bit difficult.
That's right. And what about the desks?
Yeah, the desks. They are a wonderful network, a bunch of people. We have more than 50 desks across Europe. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is, if we talk about collaboration, they are experts in that sense. They are collaboration agents. They are facilitators for partnerships, for pan-European projects. And of course, they know a lot about financing and support on European level, and how to combine the support with regional and national money. And the good thing is, if you access one, you get us all, because we are very well connected. We are working closely together, and no matter if you would like to find somebody, partner in Slovenia or Iceland or Portugal, so we will make that possible.
Wonderful. So you work also collectively. I think it will be a lot about collaboration today. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you. Wonderful. So now I have the great honor to introduce the Federal Government Commissioner for Culture and the Media in the government of Angela Merkel, a role she has since 2013. She has been a member of the German Bundestag since 2005 and was chairwoman of the Committee on Culture and Media Affairs from 2009 to 2013. So she's a true expert in these matters. Professor Monika Grütters, Minister of State for Culture and the Media.
Exzellenzen, verehrte Kolleginnen und Kollegen, Abgeordnete, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren. Der Filmkritiker Michael Alten schrieb einmal, der Film bringe uns eine Art Weltsprache bei, ein Esperanto der Augen. Er resümiert, heute ist die Welt ein Dorf und das Kino hat seinen Teil dazu beigetragen. Das ist auch Ihr Verdienst, liebe Filmemacherinnen und Filmemacher, liebe Konferenzteilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmer aus der Medienbranche. Sie versetzen uns mit bewegten und bewegenden Bildern in fremde Erfahrungswelten. Gewiss nicht nur, aber gerade in diesen Zeiten, in denen Corona der Reiselust Grenzen setzt und Abstandshalten zur Bürgerpflicht wird, stillt der Film das Fernweh und die Neugier, die Welt aus anderen Augen zu sehen. Filme, Serien und Games lassen uns mitfühlen mit den Freuden und Schmerzen, Hoffnungen und Sehnsüchten, Enttäuschungen und Träumen der Figuren. Durch neue Techniken, wie zum Beispiel Virtual Reality, gelingt es heute wie nie zuvor in der Kulturgeschichte der Menschheit, Fiktion und Realität künstlich zu verschmelzen. Das verlangt eine breite, auch ethische Debatte über den verantwortungsvollen Umgang mit neuen technischen Möglichkeiten. Ich bin sicher, diese Konferenz wird auch zu dieser Diskussion ihren Beitrag leisten. Vor allem aber wird es um die enormen Chancen gehen, die sich mit den heutigen technischen Möglichkeiten eröffnen. Bewegte Bilder können nicht zuletzt, davon bin ich überzeugt, eine identitätsstiftende Rolle im zukünftigen Europa spielen. Sie können mit ihrer Kraft zu berühren und Empathie zu erzeugen, Verbindendes sichtbar machen und Zusammenhalt stiften. Sie können auf Ressentiments gebaute Weltbilder ins Wanken bringen. Und sie können das Bewusstsein für Geschlechtergerechtigkeit zum Beispiel schärfen und Visionen für ein solidarisches Miteinander entfalten. Künstlerischer Erfolg und gesellschaftsverändernde Kräfte erwachsen aus gegenseitiger Inspiration. Sie entstehen aus dem Zusammenwirken unterschiedlicher Sichtweisen und Ansätze. Deshalb danke ich Ihnen, liebe Mitarbeiterinnen und Mitarbeiter der Kontaktstellen, der sogenannten Media Desks, dass Sie die Medienbranche mit vielen internationalen Vernetzungsangeboten unterstützen und sehr kompetent beraten. Hochwertige Filme, Serien und Games finden immer wieder, trotz aller Schwierigkeiten, trotz der Vielzahl an Sprachen und Kulturen beispielsweise, auch über Landesgrenzen hinweg ihr Publikum. Das ist nicht zuletzt ein Erfolg des Förderprogramms Creative Europe, insbesondere des Teilprogramms Media. Deshalb habe ich mich auch gemeinsam mit meinen Amtskollegen aus Italien und Frankreich dafür eingesetzt, dass sowohl das Programm Kreatives Europa als auch die Kontaktstellen mit einem entsprechenden Finanzrahmen ausgestattet werden. Denn die Medienbranche steht vor vielen Herausforderungen und das Programm eröffnet viele Möglichkeiten, den europäischen Film und seine gesellschaftsverändernde Kraft zu stärken und zu entfalten. So unterstützt das Programm etwa mit der neuen Förderlinie Cinema as Innovations Hubs for Local Communities Pilotprojekte, die neue Formen des Kinoerlebnisses ermöglichen und die Vernetzung von Kinobetreibern untereinander, aber auch mit Plattformbetreibern oder kulturellen Institutionen fördern soll. Es schafft damit letztlich Kulturinfrastruktur auch in Regionen fernab der Metropolen, in denen manche Menschen sich abgehängt fühlen und Kinos als soziale Orte für den Austausch und Zusammenhalt so dringend gebraucht werden. Und es sorgt nicht zuletzt für mehr Präsenz des europäischen Films im heimischen Kino. Der Wettbewerb zwischen den großen Streaming-Plattformen und unabhängigen Anbietern, das Problem fragmentierter Zuschauergruppen, die Herausforderung neuer Geschäftsmodelle und technischer Innovationen, all das beschäftigt die Branche weltweit ja schon lange. Die Corona-Pandemie, die vielfach Stillstand erzwang, wirkte dabei gelegentlich aber auch wie ein Innovationsbeschleuniger. Produktion, Verleih, Vertrieb, Festivals und Kinos mussten sehr rasch umdenken und handeln. Und viele von Ihnen, verehrte Damen und Herren, waren gezwungen, neue Wege zu finden, um die Attraktivität des europäischen Films zu erhalten. Damit der europäische Film seine Rolle als Impulsgeber in einer offenen und vielfältigen Gesellschaft auch in Zukunft gerecht werden kann, unterstützen wir die Branche im Rahmen unseres milliardenschweren Zukunftsprogramms Neustart Kultur mit einer Vielzahl an Maßnahmen. Verleih und Vertrieb erhalten zusätzliche Hilfen, Kinos unterstützen wir bei der Wiederaufnahme ihres Betriebes und wir sorgen auch dafür, dass die Filmförderungsanstalten in Krisenzeiten erfolgreich weiterarbeiten können. Außerdem wollen wir mit sogenannten Ausfallfonds Schäden bei Covid-19-bedingten Produktionsstörungen bundesgeförderter Kinofilm- und High-End-Serienproduktionen abfedern. Ich bin überzeugt, liebe Filmemacherinnen und Filmemacher, mit vereinten Kräften, mit Ihrem Engagement und mit politischer Rückendeckung natürlich, unter anderem aus meinem Haus, werden wir den europäischen Film stärken und ihn als Spiegel einer dynamischen und vielfältigen Gesellschaft bewahren. Das jedenfalls ist unser Ziel. Denn der künstlerisch herausragende Film und auch die anderen audiovisuellen Medien eröffnen uns auch Möglichkeitsräume und Zukunftsperspektiven und sie bringen uns einander näher in einem vereinten Europa. Michael Alten schrieb in seinem eingangs zitierten Buch »Warte, bis es dunkel wird« über das Kino, ich zitiere, »Darin liegt die doppelte Natur des Kinos, dass es stets Auskunft gibt über das, was ist und das, was möglich wäre, darüber, wer wir sind und wer wir gerne wären. Wenn wir für einen Moment die Augen schließen und uns dem Strom der Bilder überlassen, dann können wir uns in all dem wiedererkennen. Dann wissen wir, woher wir kommen und vielleicht auch, wohin wir gehen.« Zitat Ende. In diesem Sinne wünsche ich Ihnen weiterhin eine glückliche Hand bei der Entwicklung und Realisierung Ihrer Ideen für den Film. Wir brauchen einen offenen Geist. Wir brauchen Ihre Visionen, Ihre Kreativität, Ihre Neugier und Experimentierfreude, nicht zuletzt für Verständnis und Verständigung, für ein friedliches Miteinander unterschiedlicher Interessen, Lebensweisen und Weltanschauungen in unserer Gesellschaft und in einem geeinten Europa. Viel Erfolg Ihnen allen.
Ich habe die Augen geschlossen. And now I open my eyes again, and we're going to go and look further. Why? Why are art and culture important for our future? Let us take a very specific look now, and look at where audio and visual truly merge. How can film and music contribute to a more collaborative and human society? We are delighted to start this visionary day with the Icelandic musician and composer Hildur Guðnadóttir. She's a classical trained cellist, has played with the bands Pansonic, Throbbing Gristle, Mum, and has toured with Animal Collective and Sun O. A couple of you will know who that is. She played in the cello for films of Denis Villeneuve or Alejandro Inarritu, and then has gained international recognition for film and television scores, her own compositions, including for the action thriller Sicario and the HBO miniseries Chernobyl, 2019, and the latter of her made her won a Primetime Emmy Award and a Grammy Award. But for her score of the 19 psychological thriller Joker, that I know a lot of you know, she has won the Academy Award for Best Original Score. I have to read because it's so many awards. She also won the Golden Globe Award for Best Original Score and the BAFTA Award for Best Original Music. And this makes her the first solo female composer to win in both. So I'm truly delighted to listen to Hildur Guðnadóttir now, together with you.
Yeah, Europe is such a beautiful place, I think, because every country is so different. You know, it's so fantastic how different every country is, and how individual the culture is for every country, and therefore, like, the the food is in every country, and the music is in every country, and I think that's just, you know, it's a beautiful thing, and that every country has their own language, and you know, if you compare it to a place like the States, or you know, which is much more of a, you know, monolithic culture. I think that Europe is so great in that sense that you know, there's space for everything, I think, because there's so much space for individuality. So I think that there is no one European sound or one European identity. I think the identity is the coming together of so many identities. Where you come from inevitably shapes who you are, whether you like it or not, and or whether you're aware of it or not. And I think that you take in influences from your environment, you know, at all points, but especially when you're growing up, I think you're very susceptible to influences. And Iceland is a very special place. I mean, it's very vast. Like, you have the horizon basically from everywhere, and you know, there's a lot of space. The most kind of obvious, tangible influence, the direct influence that I feel that I have brought with me from Iceland is more kind of how society is built up, and how, like in the culture scene and the music scene, it's very non-competitive. And when I was young and when I was growing up, none of us ever thought that we could make a living of making music or making art. And you know, we were kind of, like I said before, we didn't have internet and we didn't travel very often, so it's very kind of, we're quite secluded in those days. The arts are a fantastic way to speak to people, you know, and to reach people on a level that, you know, on a deep emotional level. I would encourage every young person, every old person, every, you know, up and coming person, or every, you know, musician or whoever, just to really genuinely take the time to listen, you know, deep within, and to find the place and the courage to speak your truth, your genuine truth, and to stick with the truth that you are feeling, and specifically for music and film, I think, you know, I think to have the courage to therefore, you know, maybe not always go the middle path, you know, not always go the path that's expected of you, but to be unafraid to go outside the road, even if it you know, might take time, or it might take patience, and things won't happen right away. But I'd encourage everyone to take the time and the patience to stay with their truth and speak their truth. Films are also, I think, a very interesting practice of communication, and it's a very intense practice of communication, because films are made with a lot of people, and so you have a dialogue. It depends also on the project, of course, like how many people are involved, but it can be a very large scale dialogue. You know, if you're working with multiple producers and a director and a cinematographer or an editor, and depends on the project, like how much dialogue you're in with how many people. But there's inevitably lots of minds that come together to make a film. You know, I'm very interested in technology, and I think technology is wonderful. And I think it's so exciting to watch and participate and where technology is going and how we can, play with it and use it and experience new things that we could never experience before. We could, with virtual reality, go anywhere in the world and really experience it physically, and that's all very exciting and great. And I think that it's a very exciting time with lots to explore. But I don't know at the same time if that's, even though it can be maybe a bit more like bombastic and like have a bigger wow effect, but at the same time, I think the simple act of listening to one person tell a story with all their emotions behind it, I think that can be equally as compelling as walking Mount Everest in VR. I think it's definitely not to be underestimated how incredibly powerful, like the spoken word or read word and the power of our imagination is, because for example what we do when we read a book or when we listen to someone tell a story, we are making up everything in our head, and our mind is without any boundaries. We can go way further in our minds than in anywhere in VR, and I think that that's something that is so beautiful and so powerful and so personal at the same time, because there you experience something that you can't program and you can't fabricate, because it is, it's greater and it's bigger, and I think it's very important not to lose sight of the power of true storytelling, and the power of our minds. I definitely feel a lot of change happening at the moment in regards to gender and just general diversity. I think in the industry and hopefully just generally. I think there's been a lot of awareness being raised in the last few years about lack of diversity, and gender is definitely one of those sticking points. For myself personally, I feel like in the last, maybe when I started out in the film industry about like 10 years ago, I was met with a certain amount of distrust, whether I could handle making music for this and that, and just some, I would always get some like very bizarre remarks like, wow, you wrote that yourself? So something that's meant with such like, such like incredible enthusiasm and positivity, but at the same time it's like so condescending that it's kind of, it always slaps you in the face. Yeah, this lack of trust has definitely changed a lot in the last years, and I feel rather than being met with a feeling of, it's more like, yay, you're a woman, that's so cool, that's so fun. And, people are being more kind of, maybe overly positive, but at the same time, it's great to feel that people are, they're more aware and they're just more excited to hear different voices. And I just hear from, music supervisors and music editors and people that are really working like in the business that are coming up to me and telling me that, people are, directors and producers are asking specifically about female composers or, black composers, or, it's just like, it really is, change is happening, and I can feel it myself, and I hear from other people that they can also feel it. So I think that's amazing.
That's amazing indeed, and change is happening. Wonderful words of Hildur Guðnadóttir. And now we're going to turn to a different perspective, this time a more market-oriented perspective, and have a look at the screens industry. And for this, we invited Johanna Koljonen. She's a true multi-talent. She's an author, scriptwriter, broadcaster, media analyst, futurist, and a moderator. Actually, Johanna, you could do my job right now. She's also the founder of a production company programming for the public service networks on TV and on radio. She consults in and teaches transmedia design, the future of screen media. Johanna is an international authority, I must say. I see her a lot around all the festivals around this globe, as the editor of the Nostradamus project. No, we're not going to talk about astrology, but it has a lot to do with the future, of course. This multi-year international initiative of the Göteborg International Film Festival is analyzing the screens industry's changes and makes projection for the future, up to 3 to 5 years from now, through interviews with experts from the industry and researchers. So, Johanna, it's great to have you with me here today, and I will look at you on the Zoom. We're zooming you from I think you are, where are you today?
I am in Sigtuna, Sweden, so north of Stockholm.
Okay, north from Stockholm. And in your sneak preview of the report, the day before a publication, you were saying how difficult it was to predict the future, basically, if not impossible. The first sentence of the report is, this 7th annual Nostradamus report is to a large degree about exciting opportunities. And it was actually in January, February, as it was going out, right? So excitement is very often seen as positive, and we could debate if our times today with the pandemics are exciting. Are they for you?
Thank you first for having me. And yes, indeed, this year's Nostradamus report was published in the first week of February. I think I wrote those words around 20th of January. So exciting opportunity was, of course, the situation before Corona. What we've seen since then is that in crisis, existing power structures become very clear, very stark, and often, of course, that means terrible consequences for those who are weak. But crisis also reveals then, for the same reason, where there are perhaps hidden strengths. So in that sense, I think if maybe not excitement, but certainly there is hope.
Okay, I'm going to provoke this a little bit more, actually, because the second sentence of the report states the next 3 to 5 years will be a time of creativity and chaos. Do you think the corona situation has actually brought also chaos into your plan?
Certainly it has increased the chaos, yes. But also, perhaps, I mean, certainly also it has increased the creativity along the value chain. We were talking in the report about creativity from filmmakers, but now we have seen during this year a lot of creativity from distribution, exhibition, festivals, markets, because they have been forced, but also allowed to test new approaches in a way that they weren't before.
That's right. You were also seeing a boost of creativity, author, driver, storytelling, and content explosion. That's actually the wording of the report, if I don't mistaken. So will that happen any longer?
Yes, I think it will. I think that we will see still, the filmmakers who are working have not lost talent this year, and I think there will be an even stricter focus perhaps in which projects get selected. Specifically, I did write about an opportunity that was emerging where broader audiences and also younger audiences were connecting with elevated art house content specifically in the cinemas. Parasite, of course, was the example on everybody's lips, but I think others also, the favorite, the career of Yorgos Lanthimos is a good example of this sort of crossover art house filmmaker. And I think that specific thing, that might be at least delayed because, of course, the corona pandemic has had such an influence specifically on exhibition. But the artistic production, is continuing as strongly as ever.
Well, that's actually very good news. But let me just cite also one or two other sentences of the introduction of your report, which I find also so true. You said, or the report says, the risks are as enormous as the opportunities. Do you think the crisis has provided also new opportunities for the media industries? And I'm looking especially in two ways. First, a chance to solve some of the issues we had BC, I mean, before Corona, right? Or accelerate the process for development. So can we look at these two perspectives?
Well, it's very clear, to take the second first, that existing changes, pre-existing trends, things that were already in process, those have accelerated. Just the obvious example, we have seen so much movement on the Windows system, or the media chronology, as the French would say, in just the past 6 months. You know, this was going to happen inevitably, but I think it would have taken, without Corona, 2 years, maybe 3 years before getting to this point. Transactional VOD has proved itself this year, which is a relief for me, because I personally have always believed in TVOD, and I have written in the reports that I still believe that it's going to work out. And the experts have not always agreed, so I'm relieved about that. And overproduction was a big problem before, and obviously for very sad reasons, it is not a problem now. So that means that everyone has to be more selective about which projects to make, and that is likely to have a positive effect on quality. And the group that has been working very hard, who were very pressed before, are the writers. And the writers have largely been able to continue. So a lot of projects got more time on the writing than they would otherwise have had. And I think that will have a positive quality effect as well. Another problem that we had this winter was production capacity, because almost the whole global industry was working at capacity already. And you would think perhaps that problem has been solved, and it's the opposite, unfortunately. The production capacity problems, of course, are now worse, because everybody is starting up at the same time, and the system was already full. And now all of the projects that got stalled are trying to use the same infrastructure simultaneously, and that drives up prices, and scheduling talent is a nightmare, of course, yeah.
The report is also saying that the threats we discussed last year remain urgent. What are now the currently essential challenges that you see we have to deal with in the near and mid-term future? I'm thinking the production for cinema, will it continue as before? Or what about serial productions?
Well, to answer those examples first, probably there will be some readjustments between cinema production, from cinema towards serial drama. That has to do with the capacity problems and who currently has the most urgent need. We have a backlog in the cinemas, but the need for serial drama is immense and relentless, and there is also the funding is present. But really this connects, especially the film funding connects to two urgent threats, which I think I was actually referring to, which are macro trends. Which are quite horrible and haven't changed at all. If anything, it is even more urgent now. So one is the political success of fascists and populists around the world, including in Europe. And unfortunately, we can probably predict that these types of political voices and parties will probably accelerate in success because we are moving into a multi-year global recession in all likelihood. And a lot of people are unemployed and desperate. And we know historically that for some reason, or for many reasons, we haven't always been able to harness that desperation towards some kind of stable or progressive agenda. So when polarization grows in society, it tends to also grow politically, and which accelerates it further with all kinds of terrible consequences, of course, for people who are not in the in-group for whoever the populists are in your country. But this also has a very practical industry effect, because populists and fascists largely will cut public funding to the arts, to free speech, to journalism, to public service broadcasting. And as we have seen in country after country, this is the trend. So that actually directly affects also the industry in a lot of places, of course, all across Europe, for instance. And then the other big macro trend is climate change. And I think, or the climate crisis, as we should of course all call it now, it has gone in the last just 5 years from something that we expected to be about our children, or about maybe when I am old, to this is a problem that is here today. We are seeing more epidemics and pandemics. We are seeing more civil unrest. We are seeing more wars and migration because of existing climate change today. And of course, also extreme weather events are affecting countries also in temperate zones. And that means, as well as reacting to all of these other secondary crises that come from it, that we will have to direct a lot of public money to life and death questions. And it will be difficult, but vital, but very difficult to defend all of the public arts funding that we do have. And that's something that we have to take very seriously. And perhaps it would be right that some of this money will go away to more urgent needs, even possibly. And again, there are some very direct, immediate industry effects also from this. Unpredictable weather, of course, affects shooting costs and so on. And to be very crass, at least 3 of the world's biggest film production centers are located in very warm regions. And California, of course, as this time as we speak, is literally on fire.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you are mentioning all these political and geopolitical problems de facto.
Yeah.
A lot of people say there is always a winner in the crisis. Who benefits from the current crisis today? And maybe looking at our industry, the screens industries, are there any winners besides the mighty platforms or so? I'm thinking of all these what we called before the niche streamers, which are not that niche anymore. How do you see that?
Well, I mean, largely, of course, yeah, in a crisis, the existing power structures are revealed and often also strengthened. It's possible for those who have enough resources. I mean, and this could be, authoritarian leaders are using corona measures to clamp down on power even further. That could be one example. But another example on the business side is that if you have a lot of resources, financially, you are able to invest aggressively in a crisis when all of your competitors are struggling. So yes, and we have seen that streaming penetration goes up. And we have to remember also that the 5G rollout is happening and making video streaming accessible to a lot more people in the world, including in markets that have previously been relatively saturated. We're going to see a lot more streaming devices, even in markets like the United States. So clearly the streaming behavior is strengthened in the audiences. That said, streaming platforms that are more targeted, for instance, that are more niche, because they are local or because they understand their audience very well and audience needs, they have also done very well during this crisis. And I would actually say for the film industry, the surprise winners have been everybody who has a listening relationship to their audience. So the local cinemas, for instance, anybody, and certainly if you have a two-way conversation, we are an industry that we tell the audience what to listen to and so on, but this is what you should see, here it is, but we don't listen very much. But this year we have been forced to listen, and it has been very good and shown these hidden strengths that I think we can leverage going forward.
Excellent. Talking about the audience, let's look beyond corona crisis. And do you think that film, I know it's a provocative question, but do you think the film remains really important for Europe's cultural landscape? And especially, do you think there is still an audience, a young audience, looking for European films, or are they all streaming? How do you see this?
So when I say there has been, you say film and then you say streaming as though they are not the same thing. Let's remember that since the invention of the VHS, possibly since the invention of television, we have already seen the majority of our films that we see every year, we see in the living room. That has not changed. Streaming is just a distribution solution, right? As well as a business model thing. When it comes to the content, I mean, I can't speak to the exhibition. I think that art house exhibition has a strong or like different kinds of community cinemas will bloom. That would be my guess. I can't strongly predict it, but I think that's what's going to happen. And that, of course, means also European cinema. I think young audiences are not super bothered about where the content is coming from. They are certainly very comfortable reading subtitles. It changes a little bit. You can't multitask very well if you also have to read subtitles, but if the show is worth it, they will absolutely read subtitles. But I think I have another approach to this question, which is the geopolitical tendencies in general. I think we are looking at the end in some, I sound very dramatic now, but the end of the American empire. We're moving towards the end of the period in history when America has been culturally dominant in the world. And the question is who will step in? And I think for Europe, we are not ready to align ourselves with, for instance, Chinese culture because of its authoritarian nature and concerns like this. And there are no other very strong contenders there either. I think the obvious consequence is that we will turn towards Europe. I think that inevitably there will be with younger audiences, and especially young people who do not fly and who will travel across Europe more on trains, there will just be a greater interest and investment in European culture and languages and European storytelling.
Right. I will be careful when I say film, cinema, streaming, and more different. Yes. Yeah, you got me. But anyway, is it possible to create a kind of new cinephiles, like film and cinema specifically? Or better said, do we need and how can we connect better with our audiences to have them, to create new ones, to reach out?
So when it comes to cinema exhibition, of course, we have to have a deeper understanding of what kinds of experiences are there. And we know that exhibition is polarizing, perhaps diversifying. So the experience of going to see for an IMAX theater to see a blockbuster film, I'm going to get value for my money. I have a very clear expectation, and then I want that experience. If I go to an art house cinema, I want to be surprised or challenged, and I want to have the experience of finding something that might change me or challenge me, and that makes me feel a little bit cool about having seen it, And all of these are very different purposes that can absolutely appeal to and do appeal to young audiences. I'm not sure that there will be that identity, like the cinephile or the cineast, that was when I was a teenager, that was a subculture, because we had to work so hard to get the content. I don't think that necessarily is true. But young audiences are incredibly nuanced in their understanding of, or in their audiovisual reading skills and their understanding of incredibly complex, multi-layered storytelling. They have been trained on very complex television. So of course, I think they already are, in a way, they are cinephiles by our sort of old definition. And it's so the question becomes ultimately about relevance. Can we make content that is relevant to these viewers, and their diversity becomes a key question in front of and behind the camera, I think.
Absolutely. I wanted to go to this point also, of course, because it has been a time since we've been teenagers and etc. So what do you consider now being as important to develop a more sustainable and inclusive industry? Of course, it is diversity, but it goes maybe beyond that. How do you see this, Johanna?
Yeah, when it comes to just environmental sustainability, because we're being forced to change some of the ways in which we operate because of the financial crisis and because of the resulting from the pandemic. When we make those changes, of course, we have to have a scenario where crisis is the new normal, in a way, that the climate, the environmental sustainability and resilience to environmental disaster has to be built into a lot of our production reality and financial planning and so on. Setting that aside, when it comes to other kinds of sustainability, like socially and also financially, the most important, I think, is that the content needs to be relevant for the viewers. And there we do actually have to have a listening. We have to question our own internal biases and see what is it in our infrastructures and in our gatekeeping that is making it harder for the many creators that belong to minorities that we already have in the industry, tons and tons of them, and also creators who are women, who of course are the majority of the world's population. It is still harder to get their voices heard and their stories told. And I think that we just need to apply intersectional analysis on ourselves. And sometimes it can be hard because you may have to change something about how you work yourself, but it's worth it. If for nothing else, do it for your bottom line.
I think it's great because I see that you envision a future which is indeed sustainable, collaborative, inclusive, and diverse. Thank you very much, Johanna, to have been with us today. Really great to have your expert insights on this. And now, let's go back to the political background. Sabine Verheyen is the chair of the Cultural and Education Committee in the European Parliament, the CULT Committee, I love this name, that is currently working for securing adequate budgets for culture and education, also as part of the EU Recovery Fund. She has been serving as a member of the European Parliament since 2009. And I had the opportunity to interview Sabine prior to our conference to talk about European culture, the role of the EU there, the priority shifts after the pandemic situation, which mechanisms play a critical role, especially within the Creative Europe media measures and the future role of Europe. Let's go to Brussels. You have been serving as a member of the European Parliament since 2009. Does a European culture actually exist with so many countries, languages, nations, and does it make really sense?
The motto of the EU, United in Diversity, exactly describes our European culture, which is characterized by a huge variety of different cultural influences, languages and traditions based on common fundamental values such as the respect of human dignity and human rights, freedom, democracy, equality, and the rule of law. These values unite all the member states. No country that does not recognize these values can belong to the Union. I think the variety, to respect different cultures, different languages, to have respect if it's a big country or a small country, every culture, every language of every region has the same value. I think that is what makes Europe really a European culture, that we share our values and that we respect our differences and are united with the differences.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was reading recently, to prepare this interview, I must admit, the 5 themes which were in focus for the cultural politics planning of 2019 up to 22. And I'm sure it's not finished with these themes because it is a process. And they were sustainable cultural heritage, cohesion and well-being, support of European artists and content, gender equality, and international cultural relations. Are there any shifts in this priority ranking because of our actual situation?
For me personally, and also I think for my colleagues in the committee, at the moment, the well-being and support of European artists and and also to save the creative content have absolutely priority. Mm-hmm. The coronavirus pandemic plunged the EU creative and cultural sectors into an unprecedented crisis, and it is hard to predict the future, but it is our responsibility to actively work hand in hand together and find new ways of combating the consequences of this pandemic. Right. In the cultural sector, yeah. we have seen cinemas and big concert halls and small venues, theaters, museums close down their doors. Many festivals, conferences, book fairs, and film festivals and television productions and also film productions have been cancelled or at least postponed until further notice. So nobody knows when they can start again correctly. We need tailor support for these sectors and also for the diverse sectors and help them to access that support. I think that's also a problem out of the last months that we saw that there was support, but it was not tailor-made for the cultural and creative sectors so that they could not access these support schemes. So there is a big task for the next 2 years and also new priorities in safeguarding the variety of our cultural sectors, to bring them back to the scene, to help them to recover, and also to foster, perhaps use also the chance out of the crisis, to foster European cultural content, to bring that forward and closer to people. And that means that we also have to take a look to the recovery plan, to this 750 billion program, that there is also let's say, a share of the funds for the cultural and creative sectors. And I'm counting on the German presidency in this question too, that we find a solution. And that must be one of the priorities for the next month and also years, to recover this creative and cultural sector.
So what do you say to people who think that culture is actually only a soft factor, like an accessory amusement, and are asking, well, is this the first thing that Europe needs right now, culture, or is it a luxury in times of such a crisis? What do you say to such doubts, so to speak?
Sorry, culture is not just a soft factor. It's basic for our democracies, a basis for our societies. A human being is not thinkable without a culture. Even in the very, very past, culture was very important, and we are astonished what high cultural development we had also in foreign culture societies and so on. So culture is essential. It's not a nice to have and not a soft issue. It's also a hard fact. And what we have to see too is that culture stands for 4.2% of the GDP in Europe. It's also a strong economical factor. About 7 million people are working in the cultural and creative sector. And if you think about industry design, it's not thinkable without the creative people, without the cultural and creative sector. And even tourism is without the cultural sector not thinkable, because I think more than 30% of tourism is cultural tourism, city visiting, visiting of museums and other things.
A couple of weeks ago, you have recorded a statement on your homepage, and I think it was about the plenary session of July, mid-July or something, dedicated to the cultural recovery in Europe.
Yep.
Can you maybe explain a little bit more the position of the European Parliament in the negotiations over the EU budget from 21 to 27?
Yeah, the Committee on Culture and Education criticized very clear the cuts that were made by the Council to the education and cultural programs. The new proposal is for us absolutely unacceptable, because it cuts a lot in those sectors where we have to do more. Especially out of the crisis, we have to do more, because the cultural sector, for example, is that sector that is hit most by the COVID-19 lockdowns, and will also be still tackled by this during the next month, because the crisis is not finished, and we still are not going back to the normal. We try to go back to a kind of normal, but not exactly. So we have to do more, explicitly in the sector. That's one point for the recovery fund, and that is the reason why we ask for at a minimum 1% earmark in the recovery fund for cultural and creative sectors. That is a quite important thing we ask for. And the other thing is that the Parliament asked for a doubling of the Creative Europe program to 2.8 billion for the next 7 years as a sustainable multi-annual support for the sector and also for the recovery, because the recovery fund will work for just a few years, but not for the 7 years that are in front of us. And that is the reason why we ask for more than what the Commission now proposed. That what was done is, especially in all the sectors that are relevant for future and for the youth, to reduce in Horizon, to reduce in the Erasmus+, to reduce in Creative Europe, and also in the Solidarity Corps, compared to what the Commission proposed in the year 2018. That is solely not acceptable for us. And so we will fight during the negotiations to get a higher budget, especially for these future relevant programs we have.
So let us maybe finish by enlarging the vision, so to speak, and enlarge our perspective. How do you think that culture can solve, maybe, some of the long-term challenges that we have for our, very often said, old continent, to secure Europe's role in a new world order? We see maybe USA taking another place. I'm not sure if that's fading, but okay, that's the way it looks today. China rising. So where is the place of Europe here between these two geopolitical spaces, and how can culture solve some of these long-term challenges for us here on the continent?
I think it is important to show that Europe has its own way, that we have our culture is a mirror of our societies and of our fundamental values. And I think that is what makes a big difference towards, on the one hand, the United States, on the other hand, also China, that the structures of values we have throughout the European continent, where we say we are united on the basis also of these common values, which were shared by in big parts by the United States also in the past, but the development we see now is slightly going into a direction where we as European Union don't want to go to. And it's also the same in China. Taking a look, the value of each individual person, it's different between Europe and China. And I think it's important that we show that our fundamental values, our rights, freedom of expression, freedom of movement, freedom of cultural identity. I think that is a very important issue we have also shown in our culture. We don't have a mainstream culture. We have diverse structures, and that is what makes Europe special. And that is also something where we can show to the outside, to China and to the US, it doesn't hurt if you accept and tolerate differences.
I think this is a fantastic end, very good final words, which are actually matching your first words during this interview, coming back to the central values that Europe is sharing in its diversity and makes it a very unique and very united in a way. Thank you very much, Sabine Verheyen. Okay, now we're going to have a big jump from Brussels, Strasbourg, here back to the studio in Berlin, live to meet artificial intelligence in real life. I'm delighted to be here, joined on location by Christian Millot-Leclerc. He says Millot, we call him Millot, creative director at Walz Binaire. He's a human, no worry, a new media artist, computer scientist and choreographer from Berlin, Germany. With a background both in dancing, robo-dancing, and coding, he explores the friction of nature colliding with data and digital procedures, the tension, so to speak, maybe also the harmony of the encounter of humans and machines through interactive installations, audiovisual experiences, visual narratives, and dance performances. Millot has been working both for independent and commercial projects, including works featured by companies like Google, IBM, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and VW, and presented at museums such as Ars Electronica, Today Art Museum Beijing, and Centre Pompidou in Paris. Today, we're here to talk about AI-driven artworks, projects, solutions in media and creative industries. And hi, Millot, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
It's actually, you're the dancer. It reminds me as I was programming the Silbersalz conference in Halle 2 years ago. The edition was called Cyborgs. And there was an installation in dance, and they were like huge robots, and you would get into them, and the robots would make you dance. You didn't know what would happen.
How did you like that?
I didn't want to try it.
Okay.
I was afraid of the robot.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Did you try it?
No, but I remember doing similar concepts in which we built machines that can choreograph humans, and they had to follow. And it's very interesting how that attracted a lot of people, and maybe some not. Yeah.
Right. So you have a career as a dancer, a coder, you're researching, creating AI projects at this intersection, computer vision, human-computer interaction, gestural real-time interaction, tactile feedback systems, data science, geometric programming. How are you doing this? Can you give a little bit of examples? What is that? How does that work?
Well, when you describe that, it sounds much more spectacular than it is. It is basically, so I run a studio called Waltz Binaire, and we investigate how much machines can contribute to the very subjective process of being creative. So there's a problem or there's a desire to express, and we ask ourselves, can the machine contribute here to this thing that we normally do with our brains or with our heart or with our stomach? Can we find more insights here? Yeah.
Also, what can we see, apprehend, and understand and analyze through our eyes?
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of this experience, Helen, you know, where, I mean, because you see a lot of, but before I explain to this, maybe we can have the trailer of Helen, and then we'll know what we talk about, right?
When we discuss art, we respect each other's opinion because we know our impressions are just highly subjective. But only until the artist steps into the room. Because now we have access to the creator and we have access to answers, asking how and why did you create this piece, what drove you? And I think it is because we link an artwork to its artist, an object to its origin. What drives me about AI art is to question this link between an intention and the relating piece. So, what if we perceive an artwork, but there will never be an artist stepping into the room?
So, Mio, the artist is the robot?
Well, yeah, this is very interesting. Most of the time I'm asked now, can machines now create art? And from an artistic perspective, it's more interesting, in my opinion, to question, did we ever create art? Are we honestly expressing ourselves? Or are we just like the machines, a bunch of mathematical functions, of neurons firing and interacting with each other? So I wouldn't invest, from my perspective, too much into that machine, but to use it back for us to find out things about ourselves. Yeah.
I wish we had the time to watch the full trailer. It's like a little psychological film. Somehow
Thank you.
you're actually expecting something. Well, what's happening? What does this robot do? And what's going to happen at the end? Or how does the statue look like? It's really very cyclical and very, very beautiful. So let's go to the creative process now. These works are often bridging some worlds of creative perspective and scientific prediction, so to speak. And on the one hand, we have our human needs, you know, like emotion, creativity, entertainment, joy, but also education moving forward. And this is a big theme that we're discussing also today. The magic, right? And then there is the cutting edge technology. So how do these two worlds actually collide? You are exploring this, like?
Yeah, I think, what you're saying is super interesting because you separate those worlds, even though, for me, they kind of stimulate them. So I could see how you separated information and education from the poetic needs that you have. And imagine we would build a machine that stimulates poetic feelings within you. Wouldn't that be a poetic review about who we are? Something that we could then discuss again. Something saying that machine stimulates you and that artwork stimulates you. Well, which one was made by a machine? Which one was made by a human? And if they both inspire you, what's the human contribution here? And to redefine this again and again is part of our research. Yeah.
I love what you're saying, because when you say that also a poetical and emotional approach is actually encouraging the learning, the expanding on the understanding, and this is what's exactly happening here, what we're discussing today with the film and audiovisual industry. This is in Europe with the diversity, we are expanding this too. So that's very interesting. So talking about culture, so AI for culture. So you don't oppose this. A lot of people do, and I make myself the advocate of such people. Like, AI for culture, like, really? I mean, AI is both a powerful philosophical concept and a scientific field for research. I believe indeed it transcends a variety of disciplines and fuels collective imagination, don't get me wrong, but how can AI really enrich culture?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not sure if it necessarily enriches culture directly. I do believe that it will heavily affect humans throughout their life cycle when it comes to creative process, but also the industries and economy, and there will be a lot of changes. And I do believe it is the task of artists and culture to sketch out the challenges, the risks, the hopes of the future we would like to live in, and then invite as many people as possible into a discussion, and then be prepared for this highly digitized future.
I believe that the film and audiovisual industry is also getting more and more digital. We can see that quite a few processes, mechanical processes, etc., in the filmmaking process, but also in the creative process, and I mean in the distribution, talking about algorithm and etc. So, do you think that these data-driven solutions can bring something specific to cinema and to the film and audiovisual industry? Does it lead us somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. It will probably lead us everywhere. And that is because it's such a meta technology that we're speaking about. It is as if you find a new intelligent partner that comes into the room and you ask that person, well, your thinking process, can it lead us anywhere? Yeah, probably. Probably because it's a digital thinking entity. And it's very different from how we work, and it's far from being as powerful as we are, but it can contribute, for instance, to statistical analysis of imagery of a certain cinema market, if you will, to extract trends, for instance. But what is not currently possible is to extract a whole movie that we then see in 5 minutes production time. That is not possible,
I take the opportunity, I think there is a Creative Europe conference about AI industry coming soon, I think 29th or 30th of September. So that's interesting. For those who are interested, just look at it on the net. I'm sure you will find it at the university, the film university here in Potsdam. So it's all about AI in the film industry. I think it's going to be great. Okay, good. So, okay, let's pretend this is going to happen. I mean, do you actually also produce films yourself? I mean, you do beautiful trailers, I saw that. Are you doing also things which are focused on the film, video content itself?
Not necessarily full-length films. We work a lot in the industry with artificial intelligence and imagery, and moving images too, but not up to the complexity of, let's say, 1 hour dependent dramaturgy that is then within audiovisual sensations. That is not too much what we're working on,
Can you tell us maybe what you're working on right now? I mean, the projects coming up, which are maybe not ready, but you are able to talk about it?
So currently we're trying to extract from social media color and imagery trends and to find out if that plays back. So imagine there's a lot of creatives who share their ideas on social media, and then they kind of form trends and new directions for the future within that space of possibilities. We are able to read out this information and try to find out, well, what is contemporary design? How much white does a space need? And do we need little colored dots, or is it straight lines? And that is basically like a statistical approach to what we formerly know as, well, taste. And that is super interesting to us,
That's interesting. I think I could go on with, and what else? You know, like which is the next project? Because it's about visions today. Maybe you have projects even a little bit further coming up, like how we look like. It's exciting.
I think the most spectacular technology that has really inspired me a lot that came out lately was GPT-3.
Of course, yes.
And that is just insane because it's a language model that is able to then, let's say, speak. And it can speak based upon trained on Wikipedia or whatever. And the thing is that we tend to forget how much language actually is in our lives. So that model that can speak all of a sudden can code. Well, as tones are also just letters, could it possibly create new music and new tones? It goes on and on and on. And I do believe that I will see sensational creative works, storyboards for movies, probably a lot, and beautiful artworks in that direction.
Yeah.
Super inspiring.
Did you see Sunspring, the first one?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
And did you read this article of the GTV3 at the Guardian, like maybe a week ago or something?
Not sure.
A full article, beautifully said.
Yes, of course.
Yes, you must have read it.
Yes.
You have to read this. I mean, really, this is something fantastic. Still, there was one sentence in it. I tweeted about it, talking about trends on social media, because this robot is speaking, and at some point he's saying something like, we and they, and I was saying like, was it really a robot? There was one sentence, but I will send it on social media. We can discuss this further, otherwise I could go on forever. Yeah. No, but let's go back maybe to more real human, biological human problems, the support that we need in the industry. And AI can support us in the processes of the film and audiovisual media industry. We were just discussing this a second ago. But maybe now the other way around. Who supports the projects? I mean, you are both working with artistic endeavors on the one hand, but also with commercial companies. Obviously, commercial companies pay you to do the projects. Yeah. But how can programs in the creative sector support AI-based sustainable solutions for companies like yours?
I do believe those programs, so we're not working with any of those programs, we support them by ourselves. So we are happy to work with clients and we help them to solve certain problems. And then there's certain things that we also find problematic and we articulate them by ourselves through art. And that is important to us and that is completely independent. But the reason why it wouldn't work with official support is necessarily because it is too slow. I can't apply for any budgets that I get in 2 years to work together with some AI coders. We see something being dropped by science, we investigate its poetic qualities, its creative qualities, and then we have to iterate today and make it, try, experiment with this. And that pacing somehow, for me, never really worked with government support or anything like this. Hence, we are mostly by ourselves. So if there would be something that would be needed to change is a quicker application process.
Faster.
A faster application process that can keep up with amazing scientific processes in artificial intelligence. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, AI is super fast. I mean, it can process much more than we do in more than real time, and it's already the past. You're right. And this is an issue, and this is addressed already by the support of the government, certainly, to be as fast as possible. And yes, so this is a clear call to action here. Yeah. So, to go a little bit further, what are the most fascinating AI projects you have been seeing in the creative industries? Not from your house, but maybe somewhere else.
Then I would say it's Keeper of a Collective Consciousness by Mimo Atkin. That is a poem in which he basically just wrote 2 words like I want into Google, and then basically the most powerful suggestion, which is the Google taskbar, this entry field, suggested what he wants. And then he wrote this all down into a poem, and then he wrote down I feel. And what you get back then is basically a mirror what millions and billions of people want and feel. It's actually a very simple way to get a statistical review of who we are. And I really like this project. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. talking about culture and making us human beings,
Yes.
and shaping society in one poem.
And through technology.
Through technology.
Yeah.
Wow. So do you think, what are the implications of AI for our society, especially for culture and art? Do you think it will have a mostly positive impact on us? What do we have to be careful of?
So for instance, in the creative field, there's thinkers and makers very often. That's just a fact. There's people that actually use tools in order to increase the quality of an imagery output. And then there's people that research in their environment and find new inspirations and drag them home and then give direction. I do believe that through artificial intelligence you can cover both fields. So when it comes through this mood board culture, that we are inspired by existing work and create new work, then I believe that this might not have a future. So, because that can be produced real quick. So, but what does that mean? Well, if we want to be creatives, then we need to prove that we are more than just mood boards and reinvent our idea, how we research, how we find new ideas. And I think it would be best to do this with artificial intelligence.
You are evoking this poem as a mirror of what we feel, what we do, etc. Yeah. Do you think that these emerging technologies can be used more than a mirror, or will they boost our creativity?
I think, I think that mirror boosts. We have created once this project called Narcisse, in which the machine looks itself in the mirror, but not necessarily because we are interested what the machine thinks about itself, but in order to discuss among each other, saying like, who are we now? And I do believe if we find the correct answers and the ways how to apply those technologies to our environment, to our working fields, then I think it's a gigantic boost. Yeah.
Wonderful. I would like to ask you a last question, because I really like, you know Andrew Ng, and he said AI is the new electricity.
Yes.
And he's a businessman, he is a computer scientist, he's an investor, he's also a writer, so he's bringing quite a few perspectives in this.
Absolutely.
What's your take on this?
I think for me this is, I see it very differently, let's say.
Okay.
So we could have picked the steam machine or electricity, one of those gigantic boosts to markets and industry, and then say, well, there's a technology and it has a comparable impact. I do believe that is way not enough. Because what we have here is basically the idea to digitize thinking. And if we have that, then this would mean that we just invent a machine that will then invent the next electricity.
Right.
That is, to me, the difference.
Okay. A lot of philosophical stuff, very futuristic also to think of. Thank you so much to have joined me here in the studio. And we will go on now with our day. Thank you, Mio. See you soon again. And I wish we had a little bit more time to dance, actually. That would be fantastic. I mean, I'm really missing it. But now, we'd like to hear original statements about the support for and the meaning of film and audiovisual media for the future of society. And we ask a very famous film festival director. Do I need to name him? He has been head of the Berlinale from 2001 up to last year, Dieter Koslik. And we also ask a wonderful filmmaker. You probably remember the biopic of 3 Days in Quiberon about Romy Schneider, which premiered at the Berlinale in 2018. And there have been so many films since Das Fremde in Mir in 2008, which was premiered in Cannes, Emilie Atef. Let's have a look at what they have to say to us.
Culture brings us together, and films are very good ambassadors to bring your own story from your countries in the cinema of other European countries. To have a better understanding and to create a pan-European understanding. With the help of the audiovisual programs like Creative Europe and the media program, this understanding can grow. As a man from the first hour of EFTO, one of the first programs of media in 1988 in Hamburg, I can say that without this program, this understanding wouldn't exist, and this exchange of European audiovisual culture wouldn't exist. So thank you, and I hope it will go on. Dieter Koslik, former director of the Berlin Film Festival and first president of the European Film Distribution Office in 1988 in Hamburg, part of the media program.
Hello, my name is Emily Atef and I'm a filmmaker. And I strongly believe in our common goal to foster cultural ties in Europe. All my feature films and the films to come in the near future are European co-productions. I myself am French-Iranian. I was born in Berlin. We moved to the States and then to France, and I moved on my own to London and then back to Berlin to study film. My first feature film was about an Irish girl in Poland, and that's where I met my husband. As a child and teenager, it wasn't always easy to have to adapt to these different cultures and languages. But as an adult and filmmaker, the cultural diversity that I experienced gave me strength, a strength that I felt in myself and in the stories that I told and am still telling. However, we're in times where our diverse cultural heritage is challenged. And so we have to focus on cultural collaborations. So to point out the common values of humanity and diversity that we share. It's extremely important. I find that our stories travel and that our films get exposed in other European countries, especially now where we see that nationalistic tendencies in various territories stand against a diverse, open, and humanistic society. Cinema and films can bring us knowledge and empathy. Telling stories of the human condition can show that we are diverse, but also very similar. So let's tell stories in Europe together and for each other in order to experience what we don't know, what moves us, what makes us laugh. And let us try to transport the base of European culture, which is freedom, diversity, and humanity.
While being a catalyst of European integration and values and a reflection of Europe's rich cultural diversity, Europe's film industry offers an untapped potential to develop new products, services, and business models. And that is what the media unit is looking at and supporting. To learn more about the new program starting in 21 up to 27, I zoomed myself back to Brussels to interview Lucia Recalde. You saw that the AI brought some images a little bit too early before. Lucia Recalde is head of the Creative Europe Media Unit at the European Commission, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to interview her. So let's go back to the future.
So Lucia, it's great you could join us today and tell us a little bit more. The Creative Europe Media Unit has been designed to strengthen competitiveness, innovation and cultural diversity in the European audiovisual sector. We are now, somehow I feel it, crossing roads of the past and the future. I mean, like always, but with a new media phase, 21 up to 27, and its support program for European films, games and series, something new is about to start. There have been already 5 different media programs. And do we already have a name for this, let's call it sequel?
Well, we have a wonderful name, and first of all, thanks. I'm delighted to be here with you today. We have a wonderful name, which is the media program. It's actually one of the very, very few European programs that has established brand. So we should not change a winning horse. So we are going to keep the name, but it doesn't mean that we are going to keep the program as it is. The program has been successful because it has been able to adapt, to really take into account new market developments. And that's exactly what we plan to do in the future.
What will the new program offer exactly? What has been changed maybe, or what is totally new?
Well, the program will build on its assets, and its main asset is collaboration across countries. But we think that now we need to take the collaboration to the next level, and we need to promote collaboration across the whole value chain, or across the whole ecosystem. A second very important feature, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it, is innovation. We really need to instill innovation across the entire program. Mm-hmm. We need to instill also more flexibility, because the pandemic has shown that the industry is changing incredibly quickly, and we need to be flexible and adaptable to cope with new unforeseen circumstances. What is going to be entirely new is a renewed focus on sustainability. That's something we haven't done enough in the past. We have done very little, and we really want also to be more proactive in addressing the sustainability of the audiovisual industry.
I know that there are also new initiatives coming up within the program or beyond the audiovisual part of the creative media program. I think it has to do with the news. Can you tell us a little bit more about this news pluralism initiative starting now?
Yeah, yes, of course. Actually, the main novelty of the new Creative Europe program will be the inclusion for the first time of support towards news media activities. Until now, the support was provided on a very, very fragmented basis, and the new Creative Europe program will allow financing projects aimed at quality journalism, media literacy, and activities in support of media freedom and pluralism. And recent developments show that these actions are more important than ever.
Great. You were saying just before that everything changes very quickly, which is totally true, and more than true today, with things that were so unplanned that we didn't know how to deal with this. But I remember that 3 years ago, I was interviewing you at the Berlinale, and you were saying the challenges we address are fragmentation of the industry, globalization, the digital shift, and the access to financing. Did that change a lot, actually? And where did it change?
These challenges remain still valid, but what has happened with the crisis is an acceleration of change. We have seen in a couple of months developments that should have taken 2, 3, even 4 years. And at the same time, we have seen an aggravation of some of those challenges. Let's speak about fragmentation. The COVID crisis has shown some structural weaknesses of the industry. The crisis has also shown the difficulties to access to credit and very severe liquidity problems. And at the same time, we have seen that the market power of the big OTT platforms has increased. So that has been actually the change. The challenges remain the same, but actually the situation is more acute and more serious than it used to be even a couple of months ago. So we cannot speak any longer about an evolution. I think we are in a true revolution.
What is the future of cinemas in this scenario? I mean, are they also in this interoperability to be seen, or will they only survive as museums for the elderly? The older generation of viewers, or how can they play a role in a new distribution which is maybe more digital?
Well, the death of the cinemas was announced, I think, back in the 50s when the TV was created, and some people said, okay, this is the end of the cinemas. And it didn't happen. Again, with the development of the DVDs and the VODs, many, many times people have said cinemas are dead, are gone. And it has never been the case, because the cinemas offer something that any other medium can offer, and this social experience and this intimate connection with the big screen. And I think this is here and is here to stay. Another question is that perhaps the cinemas have to reinvent themselves as well and take advantage of many of these new technologies we have been speaking about to connect better with, especially with the younger audiences. But I know that there's a lot of innovation on the cinemas already, because they have this direct contact with the audiences and they know what the audiences want. So I'm very confident on the future of the cinemas. I think the cinemas are here to stay, perhaps with different content, with different partnerships, with different experiences, with more immersive experiences perhaps, but I'm a great believer in the future of the cinemas.
Absolutely. We will see later in the program today that they can play a very important role in social communities also.
Absolutely. And actually, this is a very important point for us, because when we think about cinemas, it's not about nice cinemas in the big capital cities. In many, many small cities or villages, the cinema is the only cultural hub, and they play a tremendously important role in creating this social fabric. And this is something that we need to nurture. And it's actually a very important priority for us. We would like, for instance, to extend our support to the network of cinemas beyond metropolitan cities and reach out smaller cities across Europe, because we believe in this very important power of cinemas to really reach out to citizens wherever they are across the Union.
So to get back to the most important point, as it always starts with a great story to tell, which makes us human to, tell and hear and repeat and create new stories. What are the untold stories you would like to listen to watch in the very next years, or year even, like as far as possible, as soon as possible?
Everything starts with a good story. That's the very beginning. And we are actually, in Europe, we have such a tremendous richness and diversity of stories. This is our main asset, is our creativity and our diverse storytelling. And why do we have such a diverse storytelling? Is because of cultural diversity, but also because we have artistic freedom to create. So this is why I don't want to tell anyone which stories I want to see, because especially these days, I think it's more important than ever that this artistic freedom is nurtured and is preserved. We want to hear a diversity of stories, different stories, new voices, but certainly from the Commission side, we will prevent ourselves from pointing to any direction. We really want your voices to be heard. That's the main message I would like to pass.
Wonderful. Lucia, this is really great. And I wish I had more time to listen to your personal, wishes on the new stories, on untold stories. But anyway, thank you very much to have been with us today. And we will continue now with the program, etc., etc.
Thank you very much.
Last summer, the European Commission called on cinemas and other cultural institutions to jointly develop ideas for creating innovative cultural centers for regions where there are only a few cinemas and hardly any cultural infrastructures. A German project can also be found on the funding list that has just been published, Connecting Cinemas in Rural Areas, a project by Neue Kammerspiele in Kleinmachnow and Public Arts Lab in Berlin. And today we are joined in the studio by Susa Pop here, with social distancing so far away, from Public Arts Lab Berlin, and Caroline Huder from the Neue Kammerspiele Kleinmachnow, as well as even further away, Gorana Baricic-Bacelik. Hello, Gorana. You are Zoom from the Fortress of Culture Šibenik, who are joining us today all the way from Croatia. Welcome in our circle. It's great to have you here. And the Fortress Šibenik is one of the partners involved in the project. But the consortium involves actually many more partners, a great constellation. It's 5 cinema partners in rural regions, 2 culture centers, 3 festivals, 3 EU networks, 3 universities, 2 media tech hubs, 1 creative entrepreneurship hub from 7 European countries. Whoa, how does that work? I would say we're going to start this conversation with connected partnership. And I'm going to start with you, Caroline. You are cultural manager working in Kleinmachnow, a municipality about 20,000 inhabitants in Brandenburg, in the capital region of Germany, running a cultural center and cinema for the community. Such enterprises are facing difficult times right now, and together with partners, you started a new project across countries. So what is it about?
Project?
Yes.
The project is about that we want to connect the cinemas more than they are connected at this moment, because we usually have our program, we program it by ourselves, and we have our audience, and they come to see the movies. And the idea was to connect not only the cinemas, but even the audience, so they can maybe meet each other in our cinema, meet Croatia, for instance, and to see the audience, and to maybe we can watch a movie together, or ideas like this. So to make a more concrete connection between us.
That's wonderful. We're going to go back to this connecting the audiences later on, but for now, I'm still exploring a little bit the partners and then how does this work. And maybe before we jump to Susa, maybe we can have a trailer about the project. That would be great.
Prvenstveno volim film zato jer smo svi u svome filmu, u neku ruku. Isto tako volim film jer omogućuje da se skupa družimo, svi skupa, znači prijatelji i obitelj, isto tako.
De acasă pot vedea orice film, însă experiența de la cinematograf este cu totul alta. Aici sunt dezbateri, invitați speciali și oameni noi pe care pot să-i cunosc.
War hier, in Kleinmachnow, im Kino, die Karl-May-Filme aus den 60er Jahren auf großer Leinwand gesehen zu haben.
Susa, as curator and cultural entrepreneur, you are the artistic director and co-founder of the Public Arts Lab, the Urban Media Art Academy, and the Connecting Cities Network. You work with networks at the intersection of urban planning, creative technologies, science, and economies. So tell us maybe a little bit more around this project. What are the challenges that rural cinemas are facing?
Yes, I think rural cinemas are facing the big challenge to gain new audiences, especially young people. And what we would like to reach out with this project is to include young people into the cinema making process. And yes, and also, of course, to engage the neighborhoods and yes, the people living in the rural areas and transform the cinema into a cultural center. So I guess this is one of the most important goals which we have with this project, and because yes, it's important that we develop these idea of rural cinema making further.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there is also the challenge of the digitalization, technological infrastructure? I mean, like, how does that work in a rural area?
Yeah, so I guess, or what we can see already is that bandwidth and digitization is everywhere in the countryside. Mm-hmm. We recently have seen it with COVID-19, that the people go back to the countryside and work from there. So there is a lot of infrastructure already there. But yeah, the important thing is that you really use the cinema as a space for neighborhoods and test these new digital possibilities by, I would not say maybe during the cinema, but for sure before the process of cinema and film watching and afterwards. There are many possibilities to extend the stay in the cinema.
Thank you. Let's go to Croatia. Gorana, you are an expert in the management and interpretation of cultural heritage. You lead the Cultural Fortress Šibenik, a public institution in culture that takes care of the revitalized Šibenik fortresses of St. Mihol Villa and Barone. You know, I was reading all about this project and I was like, I want to go there, you know, this is beautiful.
Yeah, you should.
Yes, exactly. So what role does the Fortress of Šibenik play? How a historical site came into this project?
Well, Fortress of Culture Šibenik team is very experienced in the European Union co-funded projects because both of our fortresses were reconstructed and revitalized through European Union funded projects. So our aim as managers of the fortresses is to give them a new life, make them very active and very creative places for the community as well as for all of the visitors of our city, because we are also a touristic place, touristic city as well. So that is why we decided both of the fortresses have open air stages. You saw a short clip of it in this trailer you showed. And what we decided is to make those open air stages also open air summer cinemas as well. The reason was that Šibenik lacked art house cinema, local city cinema. 9 generations, so from 2001 and up to 2010, were brought up without a cinema at all in the city. And that's why when we started to work in 2014, we decided that on our fortresses that should be also cinema projections and movies. And we started these summer cinema programs, and the great news that we are all awaiting here in Šibenik is next year's renovation and completion of...
Oh, did we lose Gorana? This is really too bad. I wanted to hear a little bit more and ask her about the labs.
Of the renovation of the...
Yes, we lost you for a minute. So can you maybe repeat the last sentence very quickly?
Yes, I wanted to say that next year we will have a cinema here in the city, closed cinema, which is now being renovated. It will be a mixed art venue, so not only for films, but other forms of cultural events as well. So that's why we engaged in this project, and it's very important for us at this moment.
Great. Can you tell me more about the labs, as long as I still have you here?
Well, labs are kind of envisaged as events that will make us some exchange of the experiences and talk about challenges. There are local labs organized during the project, as well as international labs. And in August here in Šibenik, we had a local lab with our local stakeholders from the film industry, talked about all the problems we are tackling, and the conclusion is that we together, if we act jointly, that perhaps those problems will be solved more quickly and more effectively. And our international labs will also give us a chance to exchange these experiences, to talk on the European level about what the problems that we are facing in this whole theme about connecting cinemas, filmmaking, audience development, and so on. And labs, of course, have some themes, and those are the directions that are a kind of a basis of this project, and that is to connect, to engage, and to entertain.
So it seems to me that you're telling me that the challenges we were talking about a second ago together with Susa and Caroline are pretty much the same in Europe. Is that true? And yes, you all agree the problems are approximately the same independently in which country we are when we are going to rural zones? Can it be like technological infrastructure, audience building, you were saying too, right? Film distribution policies, I guess also, network building, etc. Okay, well, that's good. So we can, now that we are all on the same line, now we can go on. Maybe turning back to you, Caroline and Susa, how exactly does the collaboration between so many different partners in so many different contexts actually work? Who wants to take it first? Susa, please.
Yes, I would refer to what Gorana already said about the labs. So these labs are really important because we try to develop the whole program of connecting cinemas in a kind of co-design process. So from the very beginning, we want to include the partners into the program development and share experience, knowledge, and so because we would like to really meet the needs and develop a site-specific local program which is also functioning on a European level. So yeah, this is how we use the labs in terms of co-designing and in a process all together. And then of course we have the Connecting Cinemas events where we will address outside, will include the audiences, the neighborhoods from the local region, and of course have this exchange between the cinemas of our partner cities.
It sounds actually like a dream, right? Cinema outside, on the countryside. I mean, this is exactly what we need now. Do you think that this initiative is actually making the most of what's happening today? Maybe to you, Caroline?
Yeah, but we started with this idea last year, so we didn't know about this situation today when we started it, and it turns out that it was perfect. It fits perfect in the times at this moment. And so it was, we had this idea just before the call came. I wanted to say, we talked about this and about our idea, and then some months later this call came, and I passed it to Susa and said, they listened to us. We were in Brussels, by the way, so maybe that, yeah.
That was a sign, being in Brussels. Okay. Good. So I would love to explore a little bit more what you were evoking a little before. We were talking about connecting partnerships now a little bit, but now let's go maybe about these connected audiences. This is very interesting. So most of the European cinema networks are supporting the cinemas in their programming. Obviously, we see this when we go to the cinema. But connecting cinemas in rural regions connects cinemas European-wide, right? By establishing a network, effectively working to share events and programs the same. But there is also knowledge transfer. It's not only the program, right? It is a little bit more comprehensive as a project. Is it? I mean, like, how does that work?
Yes, so on one hand, of course, it's very important because it's important for the European vision in general, for our panel, because what it is, I guess, is that we want to really reach the audiences from bottom up. So that means that they can see each other. We want to do it in a very generic way. First of all, we open the screen and the big screen as a kind of window to the local scenes to show the audiences. Maybe they make a toast to each other, watch a film together, and especially use the time before and afterwards to connect them. This could be, there are many ideas which came up in our first local lab, having afterwards a talk with the director of a film which we watch together. Also, I guess Gorana will talk about Wednesdays Around the World, which is a wonderful format, so changing our formats with each other and bringing the audiences into exchange through shared encounters, through a shared experience. And yes, and of course we hope that there is a better understanding of the cultures and of course, yes, a kind of prevention against the uprising nationalism. So if we already build these bridges with the cultures and with the people, so I can imagine that everybody cares more for each other because they know each other better.
Yeah, absolutely. This is also what Johanna Koljonen was saying a little bit earlier today. Caroline, please.
Yeah, and to share the knowledge, because you asked this as well, we created a format called Pit Stop, where the cinemas, we meet and we do for every cinema a SWOT analysis. And we can ask questions to the one cinema who is in charge at this moment. And then they can give us 2 challenges to all of us, and we try to solve their problems or their challenges, or we try to give them some advices on how we do it or what's our idea to do it. So, and we will go on for the next 1.5 years with this Pit Stop to share our knowledge and experiences.
Interesting. I would like to go back. You were evoking that Goran maybe would say something more about the Wednesdays around the world. Tell us more about this, please.
Well, it's one of many of our programs, but the only program dedicated to the film culture and film industry. It started in 2015 when we opened our Barone Fortress with an open-air stage, and it's a very diverse concept. So we are, every Wednesday during the summer, we have a projection on the fortress. And what is, I think, it's important is that it's dedicated to our membership, our members. We have a membership program at the Fortress of Culture that is dedicated to our local community members. And we are inviting them to come every Wednesday and to see an art film. And especially last year, we broadened the complete concept of the program by inviting script writers, directors, film festival directors as well, film critics, and many, many people. So each movie was accompanied by a program, by a discussion with an audience, and that proved to be great. It's a different experience than the usual cinema experience. So that is what we continued to do this year as well, a bit in how to say, a lower tone. Every other Wednesday we had a guest here in Šibenik, and every time our cinema, our fortress is full. So with a full capacity each Wednesday, that proves that the concept and the program is good. And I think our audience appreciates very much our, so to say, interactive approach of the film screenings.
Wow. Do you see, I mean, talking about the digital future of all this, right? I mean, now the network is existing, the structures are organizing themselves, the neighborhoods are into this, right? This is really exciting. And we have, of course, a very specific situation. Do you see, first of all, now, I mean, after this first season, do you see this impact on the cinemas in the neighborhoods too?
Yes, of course. Well, the situation here in Šibenik that we didn't have a continuous film programming in the city. We have a multiplex cinema opened in 2010 in the shopping center in the mall. So this is something completely new, and I think that this new digital tools can help us to make this better experience. I talked to Suzanne last week preparing for this conference, and we agreed that this situation is very challenging, but what we need to do now is to grab it and to take the best out of it. And I think that all of us are more used to this digital communication and distant communication, and that the Connecting Cinemas project will now have even more sense in these times, because we are not so free to travel, and it's kind of everything is a bit more complicated than usual. But we are also experienced here at the Fortress with the use of different interpretation digital tools, such as augmented reality, virtual reality. We now did the project, also European Union project with the 3D mapping. And so we have many ideas how to engage our audiences more, especially youngsters, especially young people, with these digital interpretation tools. I think that I followed and I heard everything you spoke during this conference, and so many, I think we are all thinking the same, that the future is cinema is not something which is gray or blur. I think it has a great future, but we just need to be focused on inventing and producing some better concepts for cinema programming.
Thank you. This is great. Yes, it seems really like an answer to all to a couple of the problems we were evoking before during this conference. Thank you so much for adding this very concrete, and I can feel what you mean, Gorana. This is great. Do you think here in the studio, do you think that cinemas can operate in the digital world? I mean, thinking maybe beyond this crisis or situation that we have right now. Do you see possibilities in the future to go beyond this audience sitting in one physical space? How do you envision the future of cinema? Who wants to start first?
Yes, it's interesting, the question, of course, because there are so many immersive possibilities to be in a place where you get part of it, or where you become an actor, for example, in the cinema. All these things are possible, or maybe not yet directly possible, but can be possible in future times, that it's you who will be an actor in the film. So far, what in our reflections and what we found out is that the people actually like to sit in the darkness of the cinema and love it, to dive into the world of the cinema. They travel actually with the cinema around the world in the moment, in these times of instant mobility and close distance. And I guess it could be more the time before watching a film together or afterwards, that these interactions, digital playful interactions, will happen and will create, as Gorana said, a space of augmented and virtual reality beyond the film, the process of film watching.
Yes,
everybody loves it so much to sit in the dark and not to be interrupted, but to just diving into a world what is perfectly
story. Yeah, it's great you're saying it, because I wanted to ask you about augmented reality, virtual reality. We just had Venice expanded here in Berlin also. So like the Venice Film Festival also bringing the pieces to watch outside of Venice is great. We don't need to travel to Venice anymore, right? This is good for the canal there, I would say. Anyway, Caroline, maybe to you to close this round slowly. Do you think that cinema as a social and cultural space will reinvent itself? Are you feeling that you, with this project, all of you with the project, are reinventing cinema, taking it from the core?
Yeah, I hope so, because I think that we, all of us, we have in mind that the cinema is a place where you go and watch a movie and then you drink something and leave. So, but our idea of cinema making is more. It's to create a place where you meet people, where you can discuss after the movie, where you can, of course, have drink and food. And so, especially the cinemas in the rural areas where there's not much. There are not many other things or places to go, needs to have a position like this. Mm-hmm. So and I think this is one of our ideas as well, to create a more than just a movie watch place, or just really something where you can go and have friends. And so our cinema, our little cinema in Kleinmachnow, is a place like this. Already we have it we run it since 8 years now, and now there are people, they just say I can go here by myself because I always meet someone and we can have a drink together and then we watch a movie and afterwards we can talk about this, and so this is how it should be, I guess.
Very close to the audience and going beyond cinema. Susa, maybe also a very last question. Do you see this as a possible model to be used by other cinemas, but not only cinemas, but also cultural spaces? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's at least one goal of this whole project, because we are accompanied by an action research lab, KEA European Affairs in Brussels, and so we have an action research process which accompanies us through the whole intervention and implementation of the program. And of course it would be very interesting to develop a model what others also can just use with good formats which we develop and which we then already know that they will work, connecting audiences and connecting cinemas in rural areas.
Wonderful. Well, I think I've been asking everything I wanted to ask you for today. I could go on forever with this. Really, it is like a dream project, right? Everybody loves to go to the cinema, being outside on the countryside, learn something, watch something great, see the technology. And I'm also thinking of you, Gorana, in a beautiful space with cultural heritage. This is what we're talking about today and the importance of cinema, film and audiovisual media for this. So thank you very much to all my guests here in the studio to have been here for the collaborative networking discussion through borders. So thank you. Gorana, see you. And thank you very much for joining me here in the studio. And now we're going to go further with our exploration about the meaning of film and audiovisual media and their impact on social cohesion. And we have asked the director and screenwriter Burhan Kurbani, whose last production, Berlin Alexanderplatz, well, we're talking about culture here, revisiting Alfred Doblin's 1929 Weimar Republic classic, to tell us about his perspective.
I am Burhan Kurbani. I was born in Germany as a child of Afghan refugees. I grew up and became a filmmaker. I found a place to live and to work here. But I was always torn between those two identities, the Afghan and the German. I found myself in an undefined middle seat, and I felt miserable about it. But growing up, I made a decision to be none of the above, to become an international creature rather than a national being. So I had no choice to be identified as European. My stories take place in Germany, yes, but they are all stories of strangers in a strange land. The common ground for these strangers is language, is literature, is film, music, the arts, that what we call culture. And I always try to find a common narrative that connects my audience to these strangers beyond national identity, and to look at film as an emotional transition fluid, a cultural glue that binds us together beyond borders. And so I found my place and my toolset to use to make this place better. Especially in these times of turmoil in Europe, film is charged to talk about poverty and education, civil rights and health in a way that can touch people. And by touching people, moving them, and by moving them, making them come closer together instead of drifting apart. That is film, and that is the European vision, and that's the idea of the European Union. That's how I identify.
Future dry. No, German, we said Futur dry. Totally different meaning. And actually, I think the title of the film is No Hard Feelings. Well, that's great. Is this the same film, really? I don't know. Well, anyway, it is a story by Faraz Sharia about rediscovering one's past and building the future together, premiered at the Berlinale. Und wir haben gesagt, wir machen diese Session eigentlich auf Deutsch. Und ich sage euch nochmal die kleine Geschichte oder die große Geschichte eigentlich, weil ihr werdet gleich sehen. Also Parviz, der Sohn von Exil-Iranern, kommt mit dem Leben in seiner kleinen Heimatstadt zurecht, indem er sich mit Popkultur, Grindr-Dates und Raves vergnügt. Nachdem er bei Ladendiebstahl, erwischt wurde, wird er zum gemeinnützigen Arbeit in einem Flüchtlingsheim verurteilt, wo er die Geschwister Banafsheh und Amon trifft, die aus dem Iran geflohen sind. Und dann eine romantische Anziehungskraft zwischen Parviz und Amon wächst und die zerbrechliche Beziehung zwischen der dreien auf eine sehr harte Probe wird dann entsprechend gestellt. Und es ist Sommer, es ist die flüchtige Jugend, eine intensive erste Liebe, Zukunft und der klaren Erkenntnis, dass sie in Deutschland nicht gleichberechtigt sind. Ich glaube, das ist wirklich eine Geschichte, die ist von heute, die ist von gestern, die ist sicherlich auch nochmal so für morgen absolut relevant. Und ich bin besonders froh heute, dass ich für einmal mit Schauspielern zu tun habe und nicht nur mit Produktion und Tech-Leute und so weiter. Wir sind zusammen mit Banafsheh Hurmazdi und Benjamin Rajaipur. Die sind beide die Lead Actors of the film. Ich jumpe ein bisschen zwischen Deutsch und Englisch und seid froh, dass ich das jetzt nicht alles auf Französisch mache. Anyway, great to have you here. Ja, Ich will vielleicht noch mal die Diskussion anfangen mit dem, was Faraz auch gesagt hat. Und zwar inspiriert durch seine eigene Erfahrung, als er selbst verurteilt wurde, als Zivildienst in einem Flüchtlingsheim zu arbeiten, meinte er war mit eigenen Fragen, die mit seiner Identität auch konfrontiert. Und deswegen sagt er zu dem Film, es war uns sehr wichtig, Erfahrungen sichtbar zu machen, in denen sexistische, rassistische oder homophobe Strukturen wirken. Und die sind real. Und statt diese Klischees zu reproduzieren, wollte er auf jeden Fall die nochmal bauen. Und in diesem Film verkörpert ihr die Charaktere, die leben zu dieser Vision von dem Autor irgendwie so geben. Und diese Charaktere, die sich diese Probleme stellen. Das heißt, ihr habt das beide total nah als Schauspieler gespürt, gespielt und mit uns allen geteilt. Benjamin, kannst du vielleicht in ein paar Wörtern mehr über deine Figur erzählen, die du in dem Film spielst?
Gerne. Also du hast ja schon beschrieben, dass Parvis ein junger, queerer Mensch ist in einer ziemlich bürgerlichen Kleinstadt und der wird aufgrund von Ladendiebstahl zu Sozialstunden verdonnert, quasi in einer Geflüchtetenunterkunft und genau ist da eigentlich zum ersten Mal wie so mit existenzielleren Problemen konfrontiert als zuvor. Er ist zwar Sohn von Einwanderern und hat sozusagen, das ist auch so ein bisschen der Aufmacher des Films, natürlich mit Diskriminierung im Sinne von Rassismus und so weiter zu tun, aber genau trifft auch vor allem in dieser Freundschaft mit den beiden Geflüchteten aus dem Iran auf nochmal eine neue Ebene der Auseinandersetzung mit seinen eigenen Privilegien, auch als assimilierter Deutscher sozusagen, wenn auch mit Migrationshintergrund. Und genau, bei Parvis geht es so ein bisschen um die Öffnung des Bewusstseins durch diese Begegnung.
Mhm. Und wie ist es bei dir, Banaf, mit deiner eigenen Figur in dem Film?
Ja, also meine Figur heißt auch Banafsche in dem Film und sie ist...
ist das ein Zufall?
Das ist ein Zufall, ja. Es ist tatsächlich, das werde ich auch öfter gefragt, weil ich glaube, naja, in so einem weißen deutschen Kontext ist der Name vielleicht nicht so bekannt, aber im Iran ist der jetzt nicht unfassbar selten und das ist tatsächlich so, dass ich für die Rolle angefragt worden bin und die hieß schon Banafsche. Und wir haben auch überlegt, ob wir das ändern sollen, weil natürlich, wenn eine Person, die selber eine Minderheit ist, eine Rolle spielt, die dann auch noch diesen Namen hat, dass dann oft Leute denken, ich habe mich selber gespielt oder das ist halt so...
Oder das ist eine Geschichte.
Genau. Und das ist aber nicht so.
Dokumentarfilm auf einmal, ja.
Ja, weil natürlich, es gibt ja auch so Bilder aus Farahs Kindheit in dem Film und so. Deswegen ist es natürlich auch schon naheliegend, dass Leute das teilweise denken. Aber ich bin einfach eine Schauspielerin, die genauso heißt wie die Rolle und ja, das ist die Story dazu. Und zu der Figur... Ich glaube, es ist tatsächlich so eine Figur, die so im Iran, aber auch in Deutschland mit deren Idealismus und auch politischer Wille immer wieder an den Realitäten zerbricht oder immer wieder anprallt und so. Und ich glaube, das ist so super wichtig, diese Figur nicht nur in dem Kontext von Flucht zu denken, sondern von einem politischen Willen, der da sehr stark hintersteckt, hinter dieser Figur. Also ich würde jetzt auch gar nicht so gemein sein, aber ich würde sagen, es ist schon die politisierteste Figur von den dreien, die auch im Kontext des Films in einer Politgruppe gezeigt wird oder so.
Also ich kann es nicht erwarten, der Film kommt nächste Woche in den Kinos in Deutschland. Ja, ich habe es noch nicht gesehen, deswegen, also ich habe nur den Trailer gesehen und ich habe mich natürlich damit ein bisschen befasst. Deswegen bin ich auch ein bisschen aufgeregt, mit euch zu reden, weil ich denke so, und danach gehe ich auch nochmal so, und ich sehe auf den Screen so, Star-Feeling. Anyway, der Film erzählt eine Mainstream-Geschichte in einer No-Mainstream-Situation, wurde gesagt. Was bedeutet das für euch? Benjamin, starten wir mit dir. Ist es Mainstream, No-Mainstream-Situation? Wie siehst du das?
Ich denke, dass der Anspruch schon ist, eine Ästhetik und eine Art der greifbaren so Geschichtenerzählung herzustellen, die nicht bewusst, also quasi untergründig oder subversiv sein will und also just for the sake of being that. So. Und ich glaube, dass der Anspruch früh auch für Faras und Paulina, die das Skript geschrieben haben zusammen, war die Themen, die uns betreffen oder die wir finden, dass die auf die Bildfläche gehören, dass die sozusagen schon in einem ästhetischen Rahmen stattfinden, der absolut Pop sein kann und quasi alle Merkmale von großem Popkino erfüllt. Mainstream, das ist so ein Wort, ich weiß, weil das so vermeintlich negativ konnotiert ist und so, aber also Mainstream würde ich vielleicht gar nicht sagen, aber ich würde schon sagen, dass der Anspruch ist, total diese Figuren in einem absoluten Pop-Coming-of-Age total quasi nicht dumm, aber trotzdem erreichbar und greifbar zu erzählen.
Und du, Banafshe, wie siehst du das?
Ja, ich würde dir auch da zustimmen bei dem, was du gesagt hast. Und ich glaube auch, dass der Film ästhetisch und visuell und durch die Musik zum Beispiel auch und den Schnitt sehr, sehr zugänglich ist eigentlich. Also dass schon so ein Anspruch da war, einen Film zu erzählen, auf den man halt auch Bock hat, den zu schauen, einfach weil die Bilder so geil sind.
Wie habt ihr euch, also zwischen Schauspielern, sage ich mal, ich habe auch eine Schauspielausbildung, aber das ist völlig egal. Ja, wie habt ihr euch auf den Film vorbereitet?
Wie hast du dich vorbereitet?
Ja, wie habt ihr euch vorbereitet auf den Film? Habt ihr etwas Besonderes gemacht? Habt ihr irgendwie so Immersion irgendwo gemacht? Habt ihr irgendwelche Methodiken benutzt? Wie war das?
Ich glaube, dass wir auf jeden Fall alle drei sehr unterschiedlich oder du und Eudin natürlich nochmal anders, weil sie ein Geschwisterpaar spielen. Aber ich glaube, dass die Ansätze unterschiedlich waren. Nicht im Sinne der Schauspieltechnik oder so, aber ich habe mich zum Beispiel mit Faras, das war so eine ganze Reise von diese Figur irgendwie zusammen entwickeln und eine Fantasie für diese Figur, die so zwischen unseren beiden Fantasien steht und wofür diese Figur von quasi deutscher, junger, queerer Person of Color, zweiter Generation. Bei uns ging es, glaube ich, bei der Figur von Parvis mehr so um genauso, was soll diese Figur repräsentieren aus unserer Perspektive sozusagen. Und das heißt, die Recherche hatte wahrscheinlich eher sowas zu tun mit, wie bewegt sich diese Figur, gerade wenn man darüber spricht, dass man, also Thema Repräsentation, man möchte eine queere POC-Hauptfigur erzählen, die aber quasi, die sehr zugänglich ist, wie Banafshe sagt, und trotzdem larger than life und so ein bisschen also auch einfach so ein CinemaScope-Charakter haben kann. Was wollen wir sozusagen erzählen von queerer Kultur? Wie bewegt sich diese Figur? Wie spricht diese Figur? Nicht sehr beliebt, würde ich sagen. Im Mainstream sind protagonistische oder überhaupt nicht sichtbar sind Figuren, die femme sind, gerade wenn sie quasi AMAP sind oder eben männlich präsentieren. Und das war, glaube ich, so bei uns, also für die Figur war die Frage eher, was für eine Form von Ermächtigung der queeren jungen Perspektive erzählen wir über diesen Körper?
Super. Also ich meine, der Film, also du sehr viel von dem, was du gerade sagst, hat mit also der Intersektionalität und der Repräsentation irgendwie so zu tun. Der Film greift Themen und Perspektiven auf, die im europäischen Kino eigentlich bisher sehr vernachlässigt wurden, muss man einfach mal so sagen. Es war Zeit, ja. Welche sind das Ihrer Meinung nach, die wirklich so, vorne sind? Also du hast gesagt, so Sexualität, Identität, Privilegien. Ja, haben wir auch, aber Kultur, also wie seht ihr das, also diese Vielfalt und Inklusion, die heute auch mal totale Schlagworte sind, ja? Ist der Film eine Möglichkeit, das so auszubrechen und neue Möglichkeiten, neue Kontakte, neue Ideen, eine Erweiterung zu Menschen zu geben? Das heißt, seid ihr on mission als Schauspieler dafür auch?
Also ich glaube, es ist voll wichtig, sich bei diesem Film auch gerade anzuschauen, unter welchen Bedingungen der entstanden ist. Und der wurde halt nicht gefördert oder beziehungsweise er wurde halt mit so wenig Geld gefördert, dass es eigentlich fast No Budget ist oder was man in Deutschland als No Budget Produktion bezeichnen würde. Und ich glaube, es ist total schön, dass wir so viele Erfolge feiern jetzt mit dem Film, dass wir auch einen Teddy Award gewonnen haben und so. Und ich glaube, das ist eine super wichtige Tour, die wir gerade durchmachen mit dem Film auf Festivals und so. Aber ich glaube, dieser Film ist nur ein Anfang. Und ich glaube nicht, dass Leute jetzt denken sollten, okay, wenn die Queers Filme machen wollen, dann machen sie es auch ohne Geld, weil so sollte das nicht sein. Ich glaube, es ist wichtig, sich daran zu orientieren und zu sehen, okay, das kann auch passieren, wenn Leute wirklich hinter einer Idee stehen und eine Vision haben, die sie teilen wollen. Nur ich glaube, da müssen sich halt auch die Leute, die in den entscheidenden Positionen sind, die Fördergremien, die Förderer und so weiter, die müssen diese Schlagwörter nicht nur als Schlagwörter nehmen. Und das heißt halt auch Umstrukturierung. Und das heißt auch Umstrukturierung von Vorständen, Jurys, Kuratorien und so weiter.
Ganz genau. Also wirklich sehr schön. Ich wollte gerade auch noch mal so sagen, was sind eure persönlichen Erfahrungen mit Vielfalt? Also schon erstmal als Schauspieler, aber ihr seht auch noch mal, welche Menschen hinter der Kamera sind. Ja? Wie vielfältig ist das denn? Was ist eure Erfahrung bisher? Benjamin vielleicht erstmal. Okay.
Meine Erfahrung ist, ich habe noch gar nicht so viel gedreht, um ehrlich zu sein, vor allem im Vergleich zu Banafsche vielleicht. Wir haben ja beide auch hauptberuflich im Theater gearbeitet und das ist wie so ein bisschen verläuft so analog. Es ist beides, gibt sich gerade so Mühe, beide Industrien oder Welten geben sich gerade so Mühe, da eine Form von Vielfalt herzustellen und gleichzeitig sieht man natürlich, was das bedeutet so quasi in der Praxis. Ich finde es schon erstaunlich, wie oft, selbst wenn man in Kontexten arbeitet, die so vermeintlich inklusiv sind oder sich diskursiv beteiligen an diesen Themen, wie wenig Sensibilität trotzdem da ist. Also dass man sich gar nicht wirklich Gedanken darum macht und oft sehe ich, und ich hasse es darüber zu reden oder es fällt mir schwer darüber zu reden, weil es so viele Menschen gibt, die gerade und auch schon seit Jahren, und das hat das Menschen wie uns auch nicht einfacher gemacht, weil wir sind trotzdem einfach KünstlerInnen, also ich glaube, mir würden auch 15 andere Dinge einfallen, die ich sozusagen lieber hätte, als ständig darüber zu sprechen, wie es ist mit Inklusion und so.
Ja, genau. Also, aber weißt du, ganz meine Meinung. Ja. Es ist genauso wie, du gehst auf eine Konferenz und es gibt ein Diversity Panel und dann, das ist so eine Ecke.
Da sitzen halt die POCs.
Also dann kannst du sagen,
ja,
schmeiß bitte den Diversity Panel und lass uns nochmal die ganze Konferenz diverse machen. Ne? Wäre viel einfacher. Und ich bin so froh, dass also hier während der Konferenz wir auch einiges an Diversity hatten, inklusive ich auch. Und nein, aber um zu sagen auch etwas wie, was total wichtig ist, um euch zu beteiligen, weil wart ihr an der Produktion auch mal so wirklich so beteiligt des Filmes oder wart ihr wirklich so nur auf Schauspielerrollen sozusagen drin?
Also ich kann das nicht so gut vergleichen mit anderen Produktionen, weil das jetzt mein erster Kinofilm war und auch die erste Hauptrolle. Aber wir waren schon in dem Sinne daran beteiligt, weil wir sehr eng miteinander gearbeitet haben. Und
kollektiv.
Genau.
Könnt ihr mal ein bisschen mehr sagen zu diesen Jünglinge, Kollektiv?
Jünglinge,
Deutsch,
das ist ein schwieriges
Ich weiß, was ich meine.
Ja. Also das Kollektiv, der Kern des Kollektivs besteht eben aus Faraz Shariat, Paulina Lorenz und Raquel Molt, die sich im Studium kennengelernt haben und dann da angefangen haben, so Musikvideos miteinander zu machen, auch mit Simon Wu, der auch unser Kameramann war. Und dieses Kollektiv hat quasi so den Hauptteil der Produktion gemacht für Futur 3 und die Faraz und Paulina haben zusammen geschrieben, Paulina hat produziert und Raquel hat Casting gemacht, aber auch Community-Arbeit, also das ist vielleicht auch nochmal ein wichtiger Unterschied zu anderen Filmen, dass im Rahmen der Vorproduktion zum Beispiel Raquel und Apana und auch Hoa, oder? Ich weiß gerade nicht, vielleicht vergesse ich gerade jemanden, die haben so Workshops gemacht, auch mit Leuten aus Hildesheim, Menschen, die Rassismuserfahrung haben und haben versucht, die sozusagen in das Filmemachen auch einzubinden und so. Und die haben auch mit uns einfach schon sehr lange vor Drehbeginn an dem Stoff gearbeitet. Wir haben gemeinsam besprochen, was man machen kann und so. Ich meine natürlich, ich war jetzt nicht bei irgendwelchen Redaktionssitzungen dabei oder so, aber...
Verstehe. Aber das ist auch Work.
Ja,
und das ist auch Engagement und das ist das, was ich meine mit diesem so Collective Spirit. Ne? Das kann man sehr stark bei euch sehen. Apropos Engagement und auch Empowerment, weil ihr Schauspieler seid, kennt ihr diese Initiative von euren Schauspielerkollegen Behind the Tree? Dann solltet ihr das mal, weil ehrlich gesagt, es ist von euren Berliner Schauspielerkollegen Jessica Schwarz und 5, 6 weiteren weißen Männern ins Leben gerufen und ich habe den Facebook-Feed gecheckt und die haben einiges über Equality geschrieben, was sehr zu begrüßen ist. Liebe Kollegen, nichts Schlechtes über euch sagen wollen, aber ich finde, ihr solltet mal an deren Tür mal Knopfen gehen. Genau, und die haben eine Streaming-Plattform, das heißt, die kuratieren Filme. Das ist eine wunderbare Idee direkt von Schauspielern, weil ihr weiß, was ihr mögt, was ihr auch sehen wollt. Und ihr seid natürlich Figuren, wo durch Repräsentation, wo wir uns identifizieren wollen. Und das ist auch die Rolle von Cinema. Und ich dachte so, ach, ich muss das einfach mal so ganz kurz auf den Palm bringen und so weiter. Anyway, also No Hard Feelings kommt nächste Woche in den deutschen Kinos. Und warum sollten wir das auf keinen Fall verpassen? Vielleicht als abschließenden Wörter. Benjamin.
Weil es ein geiler Film ist und weil wir natürlich quasi mit wir wollen was ändern an der Art und Weise, wie Körper gedacht werden und wie diese quasi normierte weiße hetero-cis-Matrix in Deutschland oder überhaupt im gesamten Westen irgendwie quasi Medien produziert. Und es ist aber trotzdem ein Film für alle und ist sozusagen auch ein sinnlicher, ermächtigender, schöner, sentimentaler, trauriger, lustiger Film und bringt alles, was Kino bringen sollte und deshalb sollte man ihn anschauen.
Der ist kein Schauspieler, der ist eine Marketingmaschine. Ja, also ja, großartig, ja, super. Und du, Banafsheh, was würdest du sagen?
Was soll ich dazu noch sagen? Genau aus diesen Gründen soll man diesen Film gucken.
Okay, also wenn schon die Vogue sagte, No Hard Feelings ist die Zukunft, also Futur 3, ist die Zukunft des deutschen Kinos, ja? Also ich meine so, ihr seid die Zukunft des deutschen Kinos, ja? Kann man so sehen? You are on the way, I would say. We will go slowly back to English. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me here. And I would say, let us show the trailer. Lass uns bitte sehr Futur 3, No Hard Feeling, now den Trailer ab, so that wir wissen, warum wir auf keinen Fall verpassen sollten. Nächste Woche in den deutschen Kinos.
P-A-R-V-I-S.
120 Sozialstunden, richtig? Das Ganze hier ist eine ehemalige Schule, wurde uns für das Wohnprojekt zur Verfügung gestellt.
تازه اومده فکر کنم اصلا اینجوریه دیوونه هست Mama, Tasche.
Das war das erste Mal, dass ich was mit jemandem wie dir hatte. Ja, eigentlich stehe ich gar nicht so auf Ausländer.
عربی؟ نه ایرانی هستم ما اینجا زیادیم
ازش خوشت میاد؟
نه
tut mir leid.
فکر میکنم که خیلی چیزا هستم چه خوب که لازم نیست تصمیم بگیری
Hast du mal über eine Schutzehe nachgedacht?
خونه تو گذاشته بدبخت کثافت
احساس میکنم زندگیم 2 قسمت شده. اون آدمی که میتونستم باشم و اون آدمی که امروز هستم.
I see you.
Today, we heard a lot of different voices, analyses, visions. We heard there is and there will be support for arts and culture on national and EU level. There is a strong call for new and fresh ideas. And we have seen also great initiatives, how to collaborate, to produce collectively, no matter in which countries. So let's take this move towards a more collaborative, inclusive and creative future. But I have two things, or maybe three, to tell you before we close this day. First, we would like to draw your attention to the online conference, Looking Ahead, New Opportunities and Visions within EU Funding for Culture after COVID-19 by the Creative Europe Desk Culture, which will bring together experts from Europe to look forward to the new program circle. In particular, Creative Europe, Horizon Europe, and European Structural Funds. You can watch the live stream on the event on October 8th at 4:30 p.m. CET on the CED Culture website. You just have to put CED Culture website, you will find it, this is fantastic. And second, well, it only starts now, also with you, because Shakespeare said, you know, the world is a stage, so you are also on stage, basically. So think about this. What will you do to take part yourself and shape the future of film and audiovisual media? So if you're a young professional, where will you focus your career development in the next year? Or if you are an established person or company, what will you change to grow and make the world better? And more generally, just go to the cinema. Inskinogehen, allons au cinéma and organisons une watch party ou des visual calls pour discuter de films, de personnages, because it is all about stories. And these stories makes us human and a beautiful, diverse society. So let's share this all together. Take care. See you soon in real life or in front of the screen because it makes us happy. Bye.